Hi, I'm Robin Vitucci. On behalf of the AFT, welcome to Teaching. Thank you for joining this new conversation series. Over the next several episodes, we'll follow along with two early career teachers on their journey through the school year. This conversation series will give real-time insight into their goals, challenges, and successes. Each episode, they will be joined by a veteran educator, an expert, or an AFT leader in professional development to hear their stories and provide some guidance as they embark on this new career. Teaching can be difficult to navigate, especially for those just starting out. From managing a classroom effectively to balancing personal well-being, the path can often feel overwhelming. Many new teachers face these challenges in isolation, and even with the help from your school and local union, there's value and reward in hearing from other educators. The hope is that this series will provide listeners with a network of educators. You're not alone in this profession, and we have a plethora of resources to help support you along the way. This conversation series is part of a larger community on AFT's Share My Lesson website. You can find more resources after each episode and connect with others in the virtual community. And now, I'm going to turn it over to the educators. I will introduce our two teachers, and then the expert for this episode will join them to talk about their journey into teaching and discuss this month's topic, classroom management. First, we have Sam. Welcome to Teaching, Sam. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, yeah, thank you, Robin. I am currently a seventh grade social studies teacher in Cincinnati Public Schools. This is my third year teaching, my second year in Cincinnati. So prior to Cincinnati, I was teaching in Chicago for a year, and then I student taught in Columbus City Schools when I was studying at Ohio State, working on my master's of education. And all these different experiences, I've learned a lot, I've grown a lot. I think that's why I'm excited to be a part of this podcast is just to continue growing and learning, talking to new people. And, ultimately, you know, my goal is to learn new strategies to help me in my career in a variety of areas and to better serve my students, but also, offer things that have worked for me to hopefully help somebody else. One thing about teaching I've learned is that it's kind of a team sport, even though you have your own classroom and yeah, you can shut the door and do your thing, but it's better if you're learning from the people around you. So I'm really excited for that. And thank you again for this opportunity.
Thanks, Sam. Nice to meet you. And now, Kelly, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, yes, I'm Kelly, and I graduated from the University of Cincinnati in 2023. So I'm a second year teacher at Cincinnati Public Schools. My first year teaching, I taught in a kindergarten autism unit, and I didn't think I was going to make it through. So this year I'm in a third and fourth grade autism unit, and I'm liking it a lot better. And like Sam, I agree that teaching is a team sport, and you need your people on your team and work-life balance. And I think that's what I'm excited for this year. And I'm excited to be a part of this podcast because I didn't think I was going to make it through my first year. So I want to have a place for first year teachers to go as well when they feel like they're alone on an island.
Great, thank you. And now I'll introduce this month's expert, Danielle Troullier. Danielle began her career in education near her hometown in St. Landry Parish in 2013. She's worked as a junior high ELA and science teacher and now serves pre-K to sixth grade math teachers and students as an elementary math instructional coach in St. Tammany Parish near New Orleans, Louisiana. Danielle has three daughters who are 15, 14, and 3. When she's not being a carpool queen, she's cooking, reading, and hanging out with friends and working as a national trainer for AFT PD. Danielle, thanks for joining us, and now I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks for having me, Robin. I'm so excited to be here and talk to Sam and Kelly about their experiences. But before we get into this month's topic of classroom management, I do want to talk to each of you about getting into teaching and what your goals and expectations are for the year. So, Sam, you said that this was your third year of teaching. How prepared did you feel starting your first year? And how do you feel now with a couple of years of experience?
Yeah, it's funny. I went into my first year actually quite confident. I had a great experience in grad school, great cohort, great leaders, great teachers. it was very rigorous. I felt like it was the most rigorous education I had gone through, and that was exciting for me. And I left like, man, I really learned a lot, and I still believe that. And I'm still so grateful for the program I was in and the student teaching experience I had. But there are just some things you don't learn in a student teaching setting, in a classroom setting where you're the student learning how to teach. And so I went in confident, and then the teaching happened, and I was like, oh boy, here we go. And I'm not gonna lie, it was a really hard first year. I had a lot to learn. Thankfully, well, not thankfully, it felt like a battle most days, but thankfully I felt like I had a team behind me that was supporting me. Even old professors I could reach out to. I had a coach at the school I was at, it was a great help. And I had a team lead who, crushed it. So I felt like I had the support, but it was really, really hard. And honestly, I don't know if I'd be talking today without that support. So hopefully, this podcast can be some sort of support for somebody who needs it, kind of as Kelly was talking about earlier. And that this year, I'm much more confident, and I think I'm a bit more realistic. Like I know there are going to be problems. I know I'm going to face challenges. I feel more confident that I have the skill set and tools to get through those. And I feel confident that I know how to ask for help and ask, the people around me who are experts. Because, in teaching, everybody's kind of their own expert in their own little way, and you can take little pieces from everyone. So I feel more confident in my ability to do that, which, is a game changer, honestly.
I love hearing that you recognize the importance of reaching out and really like leaning on the people around you. This is not an individual sport at all. And so I think sometimes we get into education thinking my classroom, my students, my tasks, my responsibilities, my goals, and it's truly a team effort. So thank you for being here. I could tell you some first year, second year, third year horror stories. I've been through it, so I get it. But sometimes when we go through those things and we learn, that is how we build our confidence. And I'm happy to hear that you are feeling more confident and you can kind of norm your expectations for yourself and your students and have some realistic goals. Um, so Kelly, what about you? How prepared do you feel for this school year?
I feel like I have a very similar stance as Sam. I went in my first year thinking I was extremely prepared and ready to go. And then as the school year happened, I kept realizing, oh, I don't know what to do with this. And as each new challenge came, I was going with the flow. But now I feel like this year I'm ready to go with the flow and know that everything's going to change and I have to be flexible and adapt things and know that there is people to reach out to and who know what they're doing more than I do and that they can help me learn.
I love that. That's awesome. The flexibility, I think, is so important for educators. Everything is going to change. You could put that on a t-shirt, honestly. Everything is going to change. And so while I'm here as an expert, everything changes. And so I'm just here to support you all and have some really good conversation. Um, let's talk about this year. It's important to set goals for yourself and to think about what challenges you might face. So, Kelly, what are your goals for the year, and what do you think will be your biggest challenge in reaching those goals?
My goals for myself this year are to use my better understanding of what I'm teaching. I feel like in the first year, I was just trying to survive and keep my head above water. And this year, I can really slow down and think about how standards work together and what lesson is going to go with which unit and all of those things. And I think my biggest challenge this year will be adapting to a new environment since I did switch schools. I have a new set of students and a new peers, and the team really is a big part of teaching. And so those relationships are a lifeline.
Absolutely. Relationships are key. And like I said earlier, keep leaning on the people around you. but also balance your workload and just know that no matter how much you work in one day, there will still be work to do the next day. So definitely balance your workload between home and school and all of the other things that you're interested in. What about you, Sam? What about your goals?
Yeah, I think for me, thinking about my students and some of the successes I've had in the past couple of years, but also, some of the areas where I didn't see as much success as I wanted. I really want to focus on, increasing their argumentative writing and thinking skills in the social studies context. Just that good, I mean, it's a good brain exercise of like, how do you build an argument, support it with good evidence, and be critical, and just things we do every day and we don't even realize we're doing. And obviously do that in my content field. And that kind of leads into personal goals for me. Is I think I need to do better at, like, the process oriented teaching. I think classroom management can always be better, regardless of how confident. Some days I may feel, you never know what you're going to get the next day. So improving that, and differentiating and instruction to help my students grow there. And I want to take a step forward this year in more collaborative learning and getting kids to work together in a respectful way and an empathetic way. So that's kind of where I'm centered at this year. I think some challenges are, one, going to be my own ability to make those steps myself, right? I mean, teaching how to read, like, that's something like I have to do more research on, something I need more PD with. That's a problem. And actually this year I've seen a lot more opportunities to learn about that, which I'm very grateful for, being in Cincinnati. And then, so on reading, I think another challenge is, our student reading levels, student maturity, being with the crazy seventh graders, but you'd be so impressed how much they grow over the year. But just kind of all those things together, just not only the student, where the students are at in their growth, but also my own, obviously, you're going to present challenges.
So, former seventh grade ELA and science teacher here. And so I totally relate to you when you talk about maturity and reading and all of those things. So keep learning. Again, I don't think the task is ever done. Like, there's always something else to learn about. So keep learning and keep setting your own goals like you both have done, and kind of prioritize what really is like resonating with you in that year with that group of kids, and use that to guide yourself through all of the PD invitations and the different tasks that are sent your way. Really enter your workspace knowing what your personal goals are, the way that both of you have. So that's awesome for you. Both of you have talked a little bit about your goals related to classroom management. So I'm wondering, Sam, how do you think classroom management has been going so far this year? And what's like the biggest question that you have?
Yeah, so far, it's kind of been back and forth. I think we have, a lot different group of kids, which I know we've kind of talked about, today and in previous conversations, that, every year is different, every class is different. So this year's been a little different. Last year, I thought it went really, really well. My first year, as I mentioned, there were a lot of battles. And this year's kind of like in the middle, where I feel like I'm having really good days. I'm utilizing things I'm learning, but I'm also noticing a slip of increase of days where I feel a little more out of control, which is fine. And again, I kind of, I'm glad that I've had the support I've had, and to feel confident that I can find those answers, which is why I'm excited for this conversation today. So overall, for this year, I kind of put it in the middle. I might say more positive than that, but definitely in the middle. I think my biggest question would be, in the moments where there's a lot happening at once. We have a lot of personality this year, and I love it. I do. But like sometimes it's a lot, and it's like, okay, when you have, 7, 8, 9 kids who are off task, and not just off task in a way that is themselves being off task, but contributing to other kids being off task, right? That becomes a lot very fast. And I think, I can do a better job of limiting those unwanted behaviors and, trying to peel it back to where it's only, 3 or 4 or, even 5 sometimes, that's much more manageable than when you start creeping up and everybody's getting off task. So that's kind of where my focus would be today, is learning in those situations, what are the best techniques and even on the back end, things to do to prevent that from happening.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'm sitting here thinking about a particular class that I had that I was like ready to throw in the towel. I'm like, I'm just gonna not be here at the end of the day for this block because it's tough and it can be exhausting when you feel like you're losing control. And I agree with you, when we have 2 or 3 students who are off task, it feels manageable. But when it gets to 7 and 8, it's tough. So shout out to you for hanging in there and like looking for solutions. I think that the first thing that I would really think about is setting super clear procedures for typical classroom tasks. So pay attention to when you notice the behavior, the unwanted behavior is kind of spiking. Like, what activities are you all typically doing when you notice 7 or 8 students being off task?
That's a good question. I mean, like off the top of my head, um, I think it's in. Okay, so I'm just trying to think real quick of like a few different scenarios, which I am. And like, I think a commonality could be like a transition from like a class type of conversation, or, we're doing something together, we're playing a little game, whatever. Kids are working together to like, okay, now it's time to do some independent work, or even if it's not independent, like a partner work, right? It just feels like it takes a long time to get them into that work and actually concentrated, on the objective for that day without the, direct guide from me running the class, whether that's me at the front or in the back, wherever it is. And then taking on the role of, okay, now I'm going to go learn it myself.
That makes sense. And kids love to talk. Kids love to be social, especially at this age. And it says a lot about your classroom environment that students feel safe to have conversations and they want to keep talking. So that's great. I would say definitely think about moving around the classroom, like often, always moving around the classroom, always monitoring. Um, there is a strategy called get caught looking, or be seen looking. And it comes from Teach Like a Champion, which is one of my favorite books. And in that book, the author, Doug Lamov, talks about the fact that we should always be seen looking. Like, students should always know that we are watching and expecting them to do the task that we've laid out for them to do. So when you give an assignment, like constantly moving about the classroom, head on a swivel, watching them as they work. I would also say that in AFT's Foundations of Teaching, one of our modules is called Engaging Every Learner. And one of our seminal researchers, his name is Jacob Coonan, he used a term called with itness. So that kind of relates to the moving about the classroom, just being with it and always noticing what's going on. The second you see a student slip into some off-task behavior, I would address that right away. And you don't necessarily have to address it verbally. You can address it using proximity, just stand next to their desk. You can do a little tap on their desk just to kind of bring them back to, hey, don't forget, this is what we're doing. You can whisper and kind of remind them about the assignment and the task and the amount of minutes that they have left to complete that task. Ask them if they need help with anything. I would make sure not to embarrass students, especially in junior high, because that's a thing for them. Another thing that we learn about in engaging every learner is group alerting systems. So you want to make sure that when you need to get the entire class's attention, that you have a procedure in place to get the entire class's attention. At any moment, there needs to be something in place. So like some teachers will use class, and the students respond by saying yes, yes. And then the procedure is everyone stops, freezes, and gives the teacher their attention. And so that is something that I would practice. I would get really, really sharp with the kids. So if you do need to have a reset moment, you can use your group alerting system to stop the class and remind them about what they should be doing, how much time they have, and what your expectations for that assignment may be. Sometimes students really do need help. And so it's okay to ask them if they would like to work with a partner and then remind them about the voice level expectations so that they aren't disrupting other students. But I would definitely make sure that you have a way to get everyone's attention, and don't be afraid to stop what's happening in the class and just have a reset and say, hey, look, we're getting a little too rowdy. Let me remind you of what the task is, what the assignment is. Sometimes putting a timer up is helpful, so students know that they only have this amount of time to get the work done. So we have to work and then we can talk when the work is done. Kelly, what are some of your strengths with classroom management?
I think my biggest strength with classroom management is rewarding positive behaviors in explicit ways. Each of my students have a scaffolded reward system where this is hard to do in a general education classroom, but for those that teach in small contained units, every 10, 15 minutes, they'll earn a check mark. And then once they've earned all their check marks, they earn a big reward. Like my kids earn dollars also. So once they get their check marks, they get their dollar, and then they get to spend their dollar at our store. And I think they just like knowing that they're going to earn those things and that I'm going to reinforce what I want them to see in a comfortable way. And I think I learned last year, I spent a lot of time learning my teacher voice and that it's okay to be stern with kids because I call them my school babies. I love them all. I want them all to be happy, but I had to find the balance of being loving and still having kids listen and respect me as the teacher in this room.
That's great advice, Kelly. And Zaretta Hammond talks about the idea of a teacher or educators thinking about being warm demanders. So she says that we can we can have high expectations for students, and we can demand a lot from them. But also we want to be warm, and we want to earn the right to be warm demanders with our students, and that's through relationships. And so it sounds like that's what is going on in your classroom. You have high expectations, you're using that teacher voice, but also you've earned the right to be a warm demander because you are building those relationships, you're reinforcing, you're helping students to feel good about following the expectations of the classroom. So that's awesome. And really, it is tough to do 10, 15-minute check-ins and rewards, but honestly, Sam, that might be something that you can do with the class that you really kind of want to simmer down a little. You could maybe every 10 or 15 minutes just set a little timer in your phone and do a stop with your students and say, hey, I just want to let you know the behavior that I've seen for the last 15 minutes has been excellent. You all are paying attention. Your voice level is where it needs to be. I want to see this for the next 15 minutes, and maybe create some sort of reward system for your students. So thank you, Kelly, for sharing that. That's awesome. Do you have any specific questions about classroom management from your perspective as a special educator?
I feel like I have a similar challenge as Sam with getting kids to pay attention and so I have kids that will want to make a noise to get the other kids to pay attention to them. And of course, the other kids are going to respond because they think it's funny. And I don't know how to get them to not react without also reacting to this student and not distract the class.
That's tough. I know I'm the expert here. I wish I had all the answers for you all. But that is a tough struggle. And one thing that I heard you say is that you know why the behavior is happening. So that's super important, is to always understand like the function of the behavior, like what exactly is the student trying to accomplish. And so you know that it's about getting attention from peers. So I wonder how we can redirect that energy and find ways to allow students to get attention from one another, but at the appropriate times in the appropriate ways. And so, thinking about your curriculum goals, how can we embed some opportunities for conversation or interaction so that they can feel like they are able to interact with each other? How can we even practice some social skills to allow them to learn more classroom specific ways of engaging with one another? And then sometimes kiddos need a break. Sometimes they need to be silly. Sometimes it's okay. You know, maybe one of your 10 or 15-minute rewards could be, let's stop and make funny faces at each other for 60 seconds and then get back to work. And they may really enjoy that because it sounds like that's something that they like to do. And sometimes I like to make funny faces too, so I get it. Sam, what do you think some of your strengths are as a classroom manager?
I think a lot of my strengths really are just in the relationships with the kids. Um, you know, for those listening now, especially as a young teacher, I'm still a young teacher. I know it sounds repetitive because we heard it for 4 years plus, and it's like relationships, relationships, relationships. But it's so true. One, it makes the job fun. We don't want to be miserable at our job, but no one does, right? And having good relationships with your kids, makes it worth going and having a good time with them, right? But I think it also, what was the phrasing you used? Was it warm demander? Is that what you were saying? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think the relationships really help with that. I'm thinking of a specific instance, um, where I had a student, where this is this year, our relationship is getting better. I'm confident we're going to be buddies by December. That's my goal. But we're getting there. And I contacted home once, and in a negative way, just kind of holding her accountable. She didn't like that. But like I kept trying. Like every day was a new day, right? I didn't hold a grudge. I'm still trying to be funny with her. Encouraging her to do her best, be invited to the classroom. Um, and eventually there was a day this year where by no means was the class perfect, but like there was like a 15-minute stretch where she was like crushing it. So at this point, I already have her mom's number saved, and I texted her mom, and I showed her the message as I was texting. I was like, "Hey, I'm telling your mom you're doing a great job," and like her face glowed, and I think now moving forward, that just small instance is going to make it a lot easier for me to hold her accountable, because she's not going to feel like I'm attacking her or I'm bullying her or I'm singling her out. It's like, no, like he's just trying to push me to be great. And obviously kids aren't going to think that all the time. I wish they would. But I think that focusing on the relationship aspect is going to give me a lot more leverage with the student and with any student, accountability wise. Um, and listening to Kelly as well, it sounds like we have some similar questions. And I guess moving forward, I would just ask you, you've given a bunch of great advice. Thank you so much. What advice do you have, not necessarily like handling things as a whole class, but like, what has your approach been with like having maybe specific conversations with students, or like on the back end where you have to address things to specific students? What are some ways you have done that?
So, parent contact is huge for me. I think that we are all in a partnership to help students meet their goals. So I would continue to reach out with students, reach out to families about their students and let them know more about the great things than the not great things, because the great things are the things that we want to continue. So I loved hearing your story. I know that for myself, Fridays those were always my positive phone call home days. Um, so I would, for my own mental health, end my week by calling a lot of parents and telling them how awesome their kids have been. And it made me feel good and it made my parents feel good. And my kids came back and they were like, oh, my mom let me get my PlayStation back because you called. And so that was really good for me. It worked out. They wanted more phone calls.
That's what I need. I need to get a kid their PlayStation back. Then I'm set for the year on classroom management.
Absolutely, because you get a kid's PlayStation back and they're hooked. They're with you for the
Mhm.
long haul. So and I was honest with my students about that. I mean, they're in junior high. I was in junior high and I told them, I'm like, listen, that was something that they could actually buy with my classroom economy system. So they could buy a positive phone call home. And of all of the rewards that I had, that was the thing that they wanted the most, to the point that I got like backlogs and I had to tell them, like, guys, let me make some calls, let me catch up, because that is what they wanted. And they would be honest with me and say, I'm trying to go to the football game this weekend and I'm punished. So can you tell my mom how great I've been in class? And yes, absolutely, let's celebrate that. And so definitely positive phone calls home. Definitely having those one-on-one or small group conversations with students. I think it's really powerful to have those conversations when the rest of the class is away. So like at lunchtime or before school or after school, because it kind of opens up the conversation, allows students to be more vulnerable about what's going on, how they're feeling, what they think about the class. You'd be surprised the things that students will share with you, and it will like broaden your perspective. Like, oh my God, I didn't know you were struggling with that. I once had a student who was not paying attention in class, and I had a conversation with her, and she told me that she couldn't hear because the air conditioning vent was behind her, and she's like, I can never hear when people are talking, so I just get distracted. And I just didn't realize how loud that was for her, and I was able to move her, and we were all good. Um, when when having these conversations, though, I would be very clear about what you expect from them and what you would like to see from them, and also what you're going to do for them. So in the conversation with the student who couldn't hear, um, it looked kind of like me saying, I need you to participate during discussions. So I'm going to move your seat. I'm going to rearrange our seating chart, and what are you going to do to help participate? And so she was able to explain her role in participating. And she said she was going to do better with putting her trinkets and all of the little things that she had at her desk away so that she could stay focused during our conversations. So, I would definitely share with students what you're going to do to help them be successful, and then ask them what they're going to do. What is their part in this? All students, I believe, want to be successful. They maybe just don't know what it takes to succeed. So if we can break it down for them in actionable steps and hold them accountable, follow up, keep having conversations with students, I think that we can really help them to succeed in class.
That is all great advice. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Sam.
Danielle, on a similar topic as your student with the trinkets, how do you distinguish when those trinkets or fidgets are helping your student and when they're actually causing a distraction? Because I have a hard time if a student is fidgeting with like a Rubik's Cube and they're looking at it for a long time. Are you still listening to me? And like we're reading a book on the board. Are you listening or are you just fidgeting with that?
Well, I could tell my friend's fidgets weren't helping her because she was totally zoned out. She was not participating in the conversation. She wasn't able to answer questions. I would have to repeat questions. So because she was not able to complete the task and meet those academic goals, I knew that the fidgets had become a distraction more than they had, been helpful for her. So I would definitely, if a student can play with things or draw or listen to music and still meet the academic expectations that are answer questions, ask questions, complete the task, understand the concepts that we're working on, then I would say those fidgets make sense. But if you have to ask a student a question and the response is like, what did you say? If you're having to repeat, if they're not completing tasks, then I would start to wonder if those materials have become distractions. And so I would definitely um, bring that up to them and say, and let them know, I want you to be able to use your tools, but let's talk about how we use them appropriately and when we use them and why we use them. So going back to the reason that we have these materials and the reason that we're in this room, we're here to learn the things that we need to learn. And so just reminding them of those things and offering some different tools that may be less distracting or laying out specific times that those tools can be used. So while we're reading our book, your eyes are on the board, but while we are working at our desk independently, you can use your fidgets. Maybe could be an agreement that you could work out with your kiddos.
No, I really like that. And I'm gonna try to see, I'm gonna read a book about fidgets and why we use them, and then do an assessment at the end, like you said, to see if they are actually listening.
That is a really, really cool idea. And I kind of need you to follow up with me and tell me how that went. That sounds great.
Yeah, that's hilarious. And that kind of makes me think back to, I forget who said it. If it was you, Danielle, or Kelly, about the silliness in class and just kind of having moments. Like, I feel like those have been moments too that have helped me with classroom management. Last year I had a kid who just loved chess. I mean, just played chess, like would not pay attention. And, ironically though, I'm very good at chess. And I understand because I love chess. I mean, you could ask my wife, I'm sitting on the couch. She's like, what are you doing right now? I'm like, I'm playing chess. It's important. However, so like, I'm trying to get him to learn. I'm trying to relate to him. And like, like I get it. I like the game, whatever. He just wasn't having it. So there was a day I was like, okay, I'm gonna play you, right? Like we were in kind of like a partner. Kids could work with a partner, they could work alone. He was playing chess. And I was like, we're gonna play a game right now. If I beat you, you have to do your work. And so, we start playing, beat him in like 5 minutes. And he's like, oh my gosh, Mr. Ramey, like you're so, and then he went and got to work. So now did that stop his chess addiction for the rest of the year? No, but it at least helped from time to time. And then we would kind of play at lunch. He'd come in and we'd play some games too. So that was good. I think that silliness really can help with the classroom management aspect. And I think, Kelly, that was a really good idea. And kind of, centered, I know we're talking a lot about classroom management. And, nearing somewhat the end of our conversation, back to Danielle, like if you could, just kind of, if you had a summary of what you think every teacher should know, and like obviously that's a lot, obviously that's a very broad question, but like let me rephrase, maybe if I could say, if you could pick 2 to 3 things that you think are the most important for students to know at the beginning of the school, or not students, for teachers to know at the beginning of the school year, what would you say those would be?
I would definitely start with what you both have talked about tonight, and it's relationships. Get to know your kids, get to know what they're interested in, get to know how they feel about the subject that you're teaching, about their prior experiences, about their families, like actually get to know the person that is your student. And then I'd also say to plan very detailed bell to bell procedures and expectations. I remember one year a teacher said to me, I'm just not going to do groups anymore because they don't know how to behave in group work. And so my question was, what are the group work procedures? And she was like, oh, I'm not sure. So always ask yourself, what are they supposed to be doing right now? What is it that I want to see right now? And make sure that you have very detailed, very clear procedures. You want to be concise, like you mentioned earlier, Sam, and make sure that you don't just spend time thinking about the procedure for how to interact with the teacher. So that could be raise your hand if you have a question, or you can, talk quietly if I'm not speaking. But also think about what are the procedures for how students are going to interact with each other. Like, how are they going to be able to talk to each other? How are they going to ask for help or ask for a pencil or work together in a group or compare their answers and get ready for those arguments that you're going to have this year in your class, Sam? So make sure that you think very specifically about those procedures from when they enter the class to when they leave. I would also be sure to take time to explain and model the procedures. So don't just say, this is how we sharpen pencils. You just grab a pencil, there's a pencil sharpener, have at it. I would be very specific, and I would model, and we would practice over and over how we do things in our classroom. And then be sure to emphasize the why. So in the book that I referenced earlier, Teach Like a Champion by Doug Lemov, he talks about purpose over power. So helping students to understand that I do not have this procedure because I am just wanting to control how you move about the classroom, but this procedure is here for safety reasons or for efficiency purposes. So just really helping the kids to understand why they're doing the things that they're doing. In our Facilitating the Learning Environment course in our Foundations of Teaching module, we talk about teaching procedures using the acronym PRR, which is PRRR, and it stands for we present the procedure, we review it, we reinforce it. We can use Kelly's reward system as a reinforcer, and then we reteach. So when students are not following the procedure, we stop. We use that group alerting system that we talked about earlier. We stop and we just assume the best. We assume that they forgot the procedure, and we reteach. And we explain to them in steps what they should be doing and how they should be doing it. And so if we are consistent with that, eventually the class begins to run kind of like a well-oiled machine, and students just know where to go, what to do, how to do it, because you have put in that work to really help them to understand how your room runs. And then also being realistic, we're talking about human beings, and like the procedures that you came up with may not like fit everyone or work for everyone. So have those moments where you get feedback from students and let them tell you like, hey, the hand signals, we're over it. We don't want to use, can we just raise our hand and ask for a pencil? And if that's how they feel, and if that's what's important to them, being able to adjust things based on your students' feedback, I think is important.
Yeah. A few things you said kind of triggered something I think could help. One, I'm gonna start to really rethink how I reteach procedures and be much more intentional with that. I think that could save a lot of headaches for sure. But one of the kind of the rules we have that I think works well, and this is something I learned my first year, is just something. It sounds silly, just something as simple. I mean, it's not necessarily a kind of like a class recall, as you were saying. But we have a rule called one mic. So it's one person speaking at a time, imaginary microphone. And, it works a lot better than just saying, hey, be quiet. It's just like, hey, one mic on whoever's talking, and I'll say a name, whether that's me or another student. And, you mentioned, explaining the why behind things. And that one's really clear, because it's like, obviously, if you're talking, it's just like repeat what you just heard. They can't, and it's funny, and like, it's not like I'm like targeting them or bullying them. It's just like, this is why we do it though, right? And then like, how does this student feel when you're talking over them? And they've kind of owned that now, because I don't even really have to say it. Like when a kid is talking and somebody's talking over them, they'll say one mic on me, and then everybody go ooh, and yeah. So that, if I could offer a piece of advice to the listeners, that's something that has really worked well for me, and I think probably shows that a lot of these other things could work as well. And the reteaching aspect, like when we're having a really bad day, like I'll just let them scream really loud, and then as soon as I say one mic, they have to get quiet. It's kind of like a game. So it's like, we're doing terrible today with one mic. You guys obviously need some energy out, and that kind of gets back to being silly too. And they're like, oh yeah, we get to be loud, and I guess I maybe should be more considerate with how the teachers next to my room feel during that moment. Maybe I should check in with them, because the kids take it kind of serious. They're like, yeah, let's yell really loud. And then I have to say one mic and they get real quiet. But that, I mean, for then that class, that kind of helps, have that expectation be met. So I love hearing that in, other instances as well.
I love that. And I hope you feel affirmed in knowing that you're doing you're doing it, I love one mic, and I love kids having the agency to be able to say one mic on me, because what they have to say matters, And so something that you could add to that is one mic on me and like two eyes on me, track the speaker. So it's difficult to attend to something if you're not looking at it. So when someone's speaking, we turn our heads, we look, we nod in agreement. I snap because I just have a lot of energy and I just need to snap if I hear something that makes me, I was snapping while y'all were talking earlier. We could teach them how to be active listeners. So if students are listening and engaging and snapping and saying, whoa, I disagree with that, and there's some signal for that, then it's less likely that they are off task and doing the things that don't lead to meeting those learning goals. So definitely like build on what is there and what is strong and consistent in your classroom, and continue to lean into that purpose over power. This is about our classmates. We care about each other. We respect each other. So we listen to each other. And Kelly, for you, we care about each other. So we don't make faces at each other unless it's a silly moment and we just feel like making faces. But really just helping students to understand how their behavior impacts others in the classroom. That social awareness is powerful. And resets are possible at any time of the year. So this isn't like, oh, I didn't get it mastered by first quarter, so it's over. That's not true. My first teaching position was, after I graduated, was an 8th grade class. In May, the teacher had been in and out with different illnesses. And so I took over, and we really had like 3 weeks left of school. And I was like, we're going to reset. We're going to pretend like this is the beginning of the school year. And so I really was trying to practice all the cool classroom management tricks that I just learned in college. And it worked. And it was the end of the year and we started over. And so we can always have a fresh start as students or educators. We can always start over. We can always begin anew. And so don't be afraid to walk in and let the kiddos know we're trying something new, and then get their feedback and see how it felt for them.
All right, I totally agree, Danielle. I think it's helpful to talk to veteran teachers and to help remind us of our goals, and that it's always okay to reset, and that veteran teachers are always learning and resetting and trying new things. In Cincinnati, new teachers have access to a mentor, and I know my experience was very valuable. I would not have made it through my first year without some of my mentors that were given to me. Do you have any thoughts on how new teachers can continue to work with veterans beyond a mentoring program?
I agree with you, Kelly. Having a mentor is essential. As we're talking about mentors, I'm seeing the faces of all of the educators who have poured into me, who have helped me to figure out things that I couldn't Google, I couldn't like read about. And so I think it's really important just as professionals to prioritize those relationships, even if it's not like a formally say facilitated situation. So when you do meet mentors or anyone who's willing to have conversation with you about this work, get their number, save their number. They're probably going to say, call me anytime. And they mean it. They really do. Like when I'm going to tell you both, call me anytime. And I mean it, so really reach out to those folks. Be sure to stay in contact, even if it's something that you like put in your calendar, like once a month, you kind of just shoot them a text and ask them questions or send them pictures or a funny meme that makes you think of them or something that, some inside joke that you all share. Be sure to ask those what would you do if questions. If you see any sort of like professional opportunities that come up in your district, reach out and ask them, do you think this is something that I, should participate in? Have you ever done something like this? Or ask them if they know of anything that's going on that would be beneficial to you in your career. But I think that it's very easy for us to kind of slip into our own little islands and we kind of just get into our own zone. And it's important to really be intentional about maintaining those professional relationships and just staying in contact. Reach out on a Friday and go have dinner and drinks, maybe, those are the things that really keep you connected. And then also talk to people about things outside of work, have conversations about other things. We are more than just our job. And so connect with people personally and professionally would definitely be my advice. Those relationships are everything. And sometimes a relationship with with adults on your campus may be the only thing, or maybe the thing that helps push you through some of those tough days.
Yeah, that for those listening, I'll say that is something that has saved me time and time again. I have great relationships from former professors and instructors I had in grad school. And honestly, it's kind of like we become friends in a way, right? Even though, like you said, we've gone out, like during grad school, they'd come out with us and get dinner with us and talk with us. And even since then, they check in on us. If I text them, that first year of teaching, I think I met with 3 of them multiple times over Zoom. And like they loved it because that's just kind of what we do in this profession. And Kelly, you talked about having your mentor in Cincinnati, and I'm very grateful for mine as well. So I hope those listening, really think about the mentors they have and make those connections and keep those connections for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm actually in a book club with some of my colleagues. We just picked a book and started reading, and we haven't stopped. This is like year 4 or 5 for us. And so we don't have to have like permission granted from some outside entity to do this work. You can, like you said, you can easily hop on a Zoom or have a text thread. But definitely I would say to you both, you're doing an amazing job. The fact that you're staying connected, the fact that you are even asking these questions says that you are exceptional. And it's about staying curious and knowing that that every year is going to be a new year, because every year you will have a new group of students. So you may have taught your subjects, you may have taught that curriculum, but you've not taught the kids that are in your room this year, and you will have a brand new group next year. And so even after having over a decade of experience, I sound like I've been here for forever. It doesn't feel like I've been here for forever. I still feel like a novice in many, many ways, because every year is a new challenge. And so overall, I would say just enjoy these moments. If I could go back, I would tell myself to chill a little, to lighten up, and to just remember that all that I care about now when I think about my former students is that they give me big hugs and tell me what is happening in their life and remember something funny or, whatever from our class. So just enjoy your students, enjoy this time, because time really does fly. And so don't stress out. You got this. Stay connected and you'll be fine.
On that note, I think we've reached the end of our time together. As someone who works at the AFT, I'm not in the classroom, but I was hanging on all of your words, and I'm really wishing that I could use your advice in the classroom. All three of you had so many great ideas from what you do every day. You might not even know that other people could get value from it, but I hope that everybody listening could take some of those tips away. I really want to thank you, Danielle, for taking the time to join us today and providing your expertise. The research and strategies you bring from your experiences and training, I think, are just really important for all educators, and you've shared so many strategies today. Sam and Kelly, thank you for being vulnerable and sharing your stories and your struggles and your goals. There's so much to learn from your questions and from your experiences, and I really look forward to hearing from you both next month when our topic will be children's well-being. Until then, you can join this conversation at sharemylesson.com/AFTnewteachers, where this conversation and future ones will be linked, along with some resources that are aligned with each topic. We'll also have a discussion board so that you can share your own stories or advice, or just read what other people have to say. There's so much to learn from each other, and I really hope this conversation series can provide that for each of you. So now, please join us at Share My Lesson and join us next month on Welcome to Teaching. Thank you.